It was great to see my old mate Tony Butterfield up on the stage enjoying himself in his testimonial tribute. There were plenty of familiar faces, Butsy's old teammates, family and friends. But from my eyes, what it did, and I'm sure the crowd of more than 2,000 people felt the same way, is that it triggered a lot of emotions about this year's campaign of winning the grand final. And on that, the Knights have left no stone unturned with their preparations this week, a culmination of excitement and a little bit of nervousness, but watching them train, I couldn't be any more confident of the way things are going. Now that Canberra and Penrith have left the scene, we're left with two great games, starting with Saturday night's clash between the Knights and the Roosters. Look, everyone knows that the Roosters have a great home record this year, and the Knights do have trouble winning at night, but I don't think any statistics or home ground advantage will stop the boys. Don't forget St Francis Xavier College is in the final of the Nutri-Grain Cup, which will start at 4 o'clock, and it's the first time a Newcastle school has made the final. So it'll be great to see these two teams win, the Newcastle Knights and Francis Xavier, on the big day. Parramatta's run of success will be more than tested on Sunday at Stadium Australia. The aggressive and enthusiastic display, which has seen them win 6 out of the last 7 games, I think will come to a full stop on Sunday, because the qualities of experience and depth play a much greater role, I believe, in the big games. Brisbane will win this one and meet Newcastle, I think, in the grand final. What a great match that would be. Enjoy the weekend's games. I'll be back next week. Back to you, Rabs.
Members of the Morrow Park Bowling Club joked today that the termites at Wickham are enormous. When they arrived this morning, they found part of a timber wall demolished and the Veterans Office ransacked.
I cannot understand why they want to continue to break into the place. There's nothing here to take, and every time they've broken in, they haven't taken anything. They've just destroyed and wrecked the place and made a damn bloody nuisance of themselves.
The walls of the club serve as a shrine to the 19 hunter servicemen who didn't return from Vietnam, and the club will tomorrow be the focus of annual remembrance gatherings. So the overnight break-in comes at a bad time.
It's sort of a violation in their space, and what concerns me more than anything is that I've got a funny feeling that somebody might want to take things into their own hands.
Police admit that the area has become a crime hotspot.
It seems like a training ground for break-in and merchants at the moment, because it's happening here quite a lot.
The break-ins have left the veterans feeling a little like they're stuck on the wrong side of the tracks. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
No such problems for the Knights. In fact, the only real concern was Peter Shields, but his back problems seem well behind him.
Obviously, it was a little bit sore yesterday at training, but this morning's pulled up pretty good.
In many respects, it's been a long 2 weeks for Newcastle, but that time has only been good for team bonding. Time away last week was followed with Tony Butterfield's testimonial night earlier this week, and they've both helped build a healthy atmosphere within the team.
There's a real good feel in the team, and we're very close to one another again. There's a real feel like we had in '97. We're like one big family.
But one thing the fullback doesn't want is to see bad weather.
I'm not too happy about the wet weather. Obviously, it makes my job a little bit more difficult back there. All fullbacks could probably tell you that they prefer a dry track, but yeah, it's just something I have to cope with.
Given it's the biggest game ever for some of his younger teammates, the 1997 Grand Final veteran can't wait to play.
This is probably the most exciting time before the game, and once you're out there, you just got to enjoy it. It's not something you should be apprehensive about.
Coverage live on NBN tomorrow night from 7:30. With 8 titles to their credit, St Gregory's carried the weight of a school's expectation into their 10th finals appearance. In contrast, it was the first time a Newcastle team had reached the final. But a sad start for Daniel Christian, whose mistimed tackle saw him take a trip on the Medicab. Errors and the frustrations that come with them highlighted the opening few minutes. But so was the class. Chris Potter, son of St George great Mick, turned defence into attack in the blink of an eye. Joel Rawlins, lucky not to be in the sin bin after his effort did save us St Greg's try. Denied once, but not twice, Riley Mullins' boot found just enough space for Luke Hessian to score the first. Mullins added the extras from the touchline before another made it 8-0 at half-time. Desperate defence denied St Greg's a try shortly after the break, but the Sydney school was having the better of the day and David Howell's try made it 12-0. The Newcastle school's last chance turned into their finish. The desperation to get onto the board provided Luke Hessian with a double and the trophy was back to St Greg's for the first time since 1993.
The New South Wales Tandem Skydiving Centre's had its share of ups and downs, but none more final than today's closure. Among the reasons Cessnock Council has cited for shutting down the skydiving operation is an increase of numbers of aircraft here at Cessnock Airport. Yet after talking to the skydivers themselves, they say the only increase around here has been the number of people wanting to dive from aeroplanes.
It's just become incompatible to have skydivers and general aviation on the one airstrip.
Both CASA and the Australian Parachute Federation say there is no safety issue.
Skydivers say the increase in aircraft is easy to explain. It's their own, coping with the growing demand for more skydives. Local business houses, including Hertz Rent-A-Cars, claimed the skydivers were a financial windfall. So where to now? 30 staff are tonight without jobs, leaving Ray with one unanswered question he'd like to ask the Mayor.
I'd like him to tell me and my staff why other people and other operators have got more right to use the airport than I have.
Gone with the normal red and blues, Mad Monday has its traditional dress as well, and it's mostly about finding the most outlandish gear. But no matter how bright they looked, the mood was hardly colourful.
I don't think it's any easier now than it was after the game. Still really disappointing.
Leading 16-2 and with a grand final in sight, the team went down by 6. The toughest thing for most, though, was the disappointment for those leaving the club.
Just to see the look on Butchie's and Matty's face at the end after they've spent so long with the club and to be, that let down, that upset about it. So, I think everyone felt, very badly for him.
That's probably the hardest thing for me to take, is them blokes not being able to get their knee sweep for them blokes.
As for the coming few weeks, their minds are far from football.
Didn't like watching the game yesterday, I only saw snatches of it, and so I don't think any of us are real happy about watching it, and probably won't watch it next weekend either.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Shooting hit the spotlight in Australia at the last Games, given the team's spectacular medal haul. For Guatemala, its few hopes for their first ever Olympic medal hinges heavily on its shooting team and Sergio Sanchez. A former pentathlete, Sergio is in Newcastle training ahead of the Games, happy to be away from distractions and expectations of his countrymen.
The most important thing from now to the Olympic Games is my head. So technically, I know shooting, but psychologically is a thing, yeah.
Sydney will be the 29-year-old's third Olympics, and after finishing 8th at Atlanta in '96 in the free pistol, he hopes to make it onto the podium this time around.
The psychological factor is the most important, yeah. Between those 25 shooters who's coming in his day and who can keep his nerves and everything else together, he'll win.
Australian hammer thrower Karen Perkins, meanwhile, is headed to the appeals tribunal after only gaining conditional selection for the Games. The Newcastle-born and bred athlete won the qualifying meet but didn't reach the qualifying distance and must do so before September 10 to make the team. There's nothing left for hurdler Jackie Munro, however. After a tension-filled start to her final that included 2 false starts by other runners, the teenager finished second, missing an Olympic spot by a mere 0.16 seconds.
Over the last 50 years, unchecked erosion has seen around 400 metres of land at Salts Bay disappear. Now Council will spend $1.2 million trying to save what's left. Councillors voted last night in favour of a plan that will see sand dredged out of the Swansea Channel placed on the beach, the extension of an existing rock wall and the construction of 2 new ones. Action had to be taken before Salts Bay overflowed into sensitive wetlands at the adjacent Black Ned's Bay. Meantime, the Lake Macquarie Council has bought the Swansea Police Station. When police move to new premises in about 12 months' time, the council plans to turn the building into a community centre, possibly housing a library, aged care and early childhood units.
There is little Steve Merrick hasn't achieved in his rugby union career, and after hinting at it for several seasons, the former Wallaby scrum half will retire at the season's end. And what a way to wrap up his playing days with Singleton than by winning the best and fairest for the Newcastle competition. The Anderson Medal was presented to him by another former Australian rep, Andrew Blades, last night. Another premiership could cap off the perfect farewell, but there is stiff competition. The Wanderers last night added the Hawthorn Cup to the minor premiership it secured at the weekend and are favourites for the title. Meanwhile, the Newcastle Rugby League, Cessnock is set to appeal the 4-week suspension of Kane Bradley. The Goanna star halfback was outed for biting ahead of the sudden death semi-final against Western Suburbs on Friday night.
It's been widely recognised that exposure to passive smoke is bad for your health. But despite all the warnings, research has shown parents are still allowing their babies to come into contact with nicotine.
We believe people have some understanding of the dangers of tobacco smoke, but we've done a study a year or so ago and we found that almost half of our infants born in the Hunter region are exposed to tobacco smoke.
According to researchers, infants and children face higher risk from such exposure.
Because of their smaller body size, also their immune systems and respiratory systems are not fully developed, so they're much more at risk from exposure.
A $40,000 grant will help researchers in their 3-year study of around 3,000 children in the Hunter and their nicotine levels. It includes using a computerised touchscreen survey to deliver information to parents.
And the way we're trying to do that is to get the parents to identify whether or not their baby's exposed and then get the early childhood nurses to provide them with information and some skills so they can change their smoking behaviour.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News. It's a mammoth task for judges, 2 days of sniffing and spitting their way through a record 900 entries. Heading up the panel of Australian experts is wine guru Len Evans. He's seen the show grow over its 27 years.
When I came to the Valley there were 6 wineries, there's now 140 odd, 110 of them are here. There's nearly 1,000 entries and it wasn't long ago we got 300 entries.
Judges study the colour, bouquet and palate.
We haven't seen outstanding wines from the 2000 vintage. It was a difficult vintage and it wasn't an easy vintage to handle, as indeed the 99 was a difficult vintage.
And just like the Olympics, wine companies are vying for gold, silver and bronze medals.
Well, a gold medal has to get 18.5 points out of 20, so it can only lose 1.5 points, which isn't much to lose. The silver can only lose 3. And a bronze is still a good award. I mean, they can only lose 4.5 marks.
The winners will be announced at a black tie dinner on Thursday night in Singleton.
After a day's camping and rabbit shooting on a property near Jerry's Plains, workmates Lee Griffiths and Warren Watson decided to have a few drinks at the Jerry's Plains Tavern on Saturday night. In a report to the coroner, police say the men befriended a woman there who then went with them back to the campsite. Later that evening, after the trio had allegedly consumed alcohol and cannabis, Griffiths and Watson left the site. Only Griffiths returned. Police say he then drove the woman back to her home where she questioned him about the blood on his clothes. He allegedly told her, "Because I gave him a thumping. He was going to rape you, so I thumped him." He then said, "I better go check on him. I left him on the side of the road." When Griffiths turned himself in to Raymond Terrace Police Station on Sunday afternoon, he allegedly said, "I went with a friend to do some rabbit shooting and we were drinking. He pushed me into a fire and then we had an argument." Police say Griffiths then told them Watson had threatened him with a 12-gauge single-barrel shotgun. A struggle ensued and the firearm discharged. Watson was found on the creek bank with a bullet wound behind his left ear. The accused made his second appearance in Muswellbrook Local Court this afternoon. Griffiths sat quietly in the dock wearing a red and white striped beanie and brown parka as a fourth charge was read out against him. He's been charged with maliciously inflicting grievous bodily harm with intent to do so. He'll reappear in court on the 7th of November. Catherine Turner, NBN News.
It's the charm and friendly service at bed and breakfasts that has tourists lining up for this style of accommodation. The number of establishments in the state has grown by 25% over the last 5 years, and with demand meeting the supply, the industry is now trying to mature.
We're now at a time when there is a need for caution, particularly in terms of emphasis on quality and uniqueness.
At the B&B Council's annual conference in Newcastle, operators were updated on ways to stay profitable in the tough domestic market.
It's important that B&B operators continue to lift their standards, become increasingly professional, network effectively, aggregate money to work with their local and regional tourism groups.
The development of the industry is good news for regional areas, with 80% of B&Bs established in country New South Wales.
Each bed and breakfast is different, and we can provide the guests with everything from heritage to ocean views to wake up to the birds in the bush, and there's farm stays, and there's all different types of bed and breakfast accommodation available.
Brooke Webster, NBN News.
Police cordoned off the area and called in the bomb squad to deal with the problem. The street and surrounding businesses were reopened to the public only after the bomb squad found the grenade was inert and removed it.
In the last few days, a number of devices have been found, detonators, obviously this grenade now. When these devices are found, they should be left exactly where they are, not touched or interfered with, and the police contacted so that we can come and deal with them in the situation where they've actually been located.
Meanwhile, the police rescue squad were called to a Black Oils Park house south of Newcastle after more than 140 detonators were found there.
They're historical. They're old. These detonators that we've got now are maybe 50, 60 years old.
The rescue squad took possession of the detonators and organised for them to be destroyed.
They're not the actual explosives themselves. They're a small charge which the powderman puts into the larger charge. It sets off a small charge and in a chain reaction sets off the larger explosion.
Although they're not explosives themselves, police say that they can be very dangerous if left to age or are tampered with. They say the safest course of action is to leave the devices alone and call the police. Adam Harper, NBN News.
Later, Employment Minister Abbott took a shot at getting visitors to Fort Scratchley. He announced $40,000 for a master plan. Not exactly for jobs, but East End tourism.
The idea is to give all visitors to the Hunter region a taste of Newcastle's past as well as of its present.
The Lord Mayor wants to put together a comprehensive study on turning features like Fort Scratchley, the foreshore, Nobby's Lighthouse and the historical convict lumber yard into a combined attraction called Coal River.
The money will go towards developing that, and then we'll obviously be seeking more funding in due course, but we need to put the information together to achieve that.
But he realises there's much work to be done cleaning up areas of Newcastle like the West End, so that facilities are good enough to keep visitors coming back. He says Council's last budget set aside money for city presentation in the hope of attracting more accommodation and visitors.
Make Newcastle look tidier, cleaner, crisper, better presented, and develop the draw cards that are here into a package. And when we've got all that together, obviously we've got something that can be marketed very, very strongly.
When you think of the torch route which comes in through Hexham, Wallsend, Hamilton and through the city, you could be talking about many thousands more.
Discipline cost Waratah 2 points early, but skill got them the lead, with Michael Varnum finishing off some great lead-up work. That stung Lakes into action, scoring 2 tries in quick time to open a 14-4 break. The second try a brotherly affair, with Adam Hall dishing off to Chris in the corner. The Cheetahs clawed the margin back to 6 when Frank Barrett found Craig Foggo at the other end. But running into Adam Hall was a different story, and soon everyone was getting up close and personal. When the dust finally did settle, the Seagulls racked up 26 unanswered second-half points and a grand final berth. Waratah now play West for a second chance of reaching the decider after the Rosellas beat Cessnock in a battle royal last night. Little separated the two in the first half. A try to Ryan Dagwell had the home side up 4-2. Before Shane Saunders grabbed a 2-point lead for Cessnock on the stroke of half-time, with a characteristic try for the fullback made against the run of play. On a cool night, things heated up in the middle. There was definitely no love lost between these two sides. Anthony Pauling and Saunders given time in the sin bin after this. But West landed a triple combination that knocked Cessnock out of the title race. Tries to Gavin Cook, another for hooker Dagwell, and one to fullback Kurt Storworthy sealed an 18-6 win for the Premiers and an end to Cessnock's season. Anderson medal winner Steve Merrick started the elimination semi-final knowing it could well be his last game, and the Waratahs were out to make sure of it, with Dan McGovern racing over to make it 5-0. Singleton booted itself onto the board via a penalty. But McGovern liked doing it his way, the winger over again, and Waratah kicked away to a 7-point lead. The Bulls bounced back once again, a clever switch of play, and centre Scott Delibazek did the rest as Singleton drew level. Already with a double, McGovern dined out again on good Waratah lead-up work to score his third 5-pointer. It was like a terrible case of deja vu for the Bulls, as the winger ran right on the right-hand side, McGovern in for his fourth, and Waratah was up 20 points to 10. In an open match, Singleton continued to chance its arm and found just enough room to land their second try in the corner. Both teams traded tries after the break as well, but Waratah got the money, winning 30-20. They'll now play Eastern Districts for the chance to reach the grand final.
Since the Raymond Terrace bypass opened 18 months ago, the people of the town say it's become a more pleasant place not only to live but to shop. Now a committee is looking at ways to reinvent the business district to capture more passing trade.
Create it so it's a better shopping atmosphere. Look to increase some like cafe type areas, make it into a more relaxed shopping environment where people from the surrounding districts want to come and shop in Raymond Terrace.
We can bring about some change to maybe a town centre, changing some of the streets, bringing out better pedestrian flow, putting in a better drainage system in our present town park.
The Committee of Councillors and Business Leaders has drawn up a thumbnail sketch of the town's future look, and the community can have its say at a public meeting next Wednesday night at Council Chambers.
Here you've got the post office at one end of the street, and down the other end of the town you've got the big shopping centre. It's not very good.
Well, it would be wonderful if they had Grace Brothers or David Jones.
But don't expect changes overnight.
At the moment there's no money budgeted for this. It's all about long-term planning.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Paul Rahihi says leaving Newcastle was the last thing he wanted to do, but providing for family comes first.
I was quite surprised how much the emotion and that, played on me over the last week or so, trying to make a decision. I've had a few sleepless nights, and just thinking about leaving has been really tough.
Signing on for 2 years with the Bulldogs, the big Kiwi won't forget how Newcastle plucked him from the obscurity of Melbourne's feeder club last year, or the feeling he got when he ran on to Marathon Stadium.
Yeah, I've never experienced anything like that before, playing in front of such a great supporter base in there, and my little fan club there, they've really helped me lift my game.
His now ex-teammate Ben Kennedy, meanwhile, is contemplating a new jumper as well, that of the green and gold variety.
Individually, this is probably the greatest honour you could ever get, especially in the World Cup. It probably doesn't get any better than that.
Australian selection caps off what's been a year of highs and lows, which included serious injury, state of origin success and the finals disappointment. With all that behind him, the big back rower just wants to make sure his troublesome ankle is right before the World Cup tour that starts in October.
I went for a bit of a run yesterday. I was a little bit sore, but I'm pretty certain we'll get through a medical.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
And the people of the Hunter gave the torch a warm welcome back. The main street of Morisset was a sea of people, all hoping to catch a glimpse of the flame. People even making the most of the shop's vantage points to get a bird's eye view. And awaiting his turn to carry the Olympic torch, wheelchair-bound James Sidebottom knows that it would take a lot to beat the experience of being a torch bearer.
At my 18th birthday I'm going to try and skydive, so this would probably be the only thing that would top this.
When the magic moment arrived, John Johnson lit the torch of the young bearer to the cheer of an approving crowd. And he voiced the opinion of most bearers when asked whether he'd keep his Olympic torch.
I wouldn't let it go for anything.
After Morisset, the flame continued its journey north along Lake Macquarie, passing through Dora Creek on its way to Toronto.